Hello everyone. We yet again have some new information and footage in the Chad Doerman case. The man who took the lives of his precious 3 little boys and traumatized a family and community. If you're not up to date with this case, I definitely recommend checking out my previous coverage on it. I'll have a playlist link down below that you can watch. Now everyone is still wondering why Chad would do this, and information is slowly coming out more and more, which isn't usually typical in cases like this. At least not this soon. However, this case seems to be different than others, and body cam footage is repeatedly being released, documents are being unsealed, and it's just a plethora of information. However, the whole why in this, why he did this to his children, to his family, is still a mystery, but we aren't being left empty-handed with the information that we are getting. Before we get into the bulk of information today, I wanted to take a moment to remember that 3 little boys lost their lives in a horrific way here, and their names have recently been released. Clayton, Hunter, and Chase. And they were only 7, 4, and 3 years old when their father hunted them down and killed them in front of their mother and sister. Keep their little faces in mind while we talk about their father, because we may be spending a lot of time talking about Chad, but at the end of the day, these 3 children are who really need to be remembered. Just this week, a nearly 10-minute long video of police body cam footage was released of Chad being processed into jail. And I'll have the Long Crime Network video placed down below in the links if you want to watch the video in full. But in this footage, we see a number of interesting things. But I think the scariest thing to take out of this footage is how calm and collected Chad is in this footage. Considering just maybe an hour or so before, he was gunning down his 3 children. You'd think that he wouldn't be so calm and collected if he gave a shit.
What's your name?
Chad.
Chad. What's your last name?
Doerman.
Gorman?
Doerman.
Doerman. Have you ever been here before?
I think one time for fighting my dad.
And as the footage goes on, Chad is just standing there staring and, I don't know, disassociating, maybe thinking over what he did. Honestly, I'm not sure, but he's just standing there staring into space. And honestly, I find it quite creepy. Now, as the footage goes on, the audio cuts for a moment, and then in the next clip, Chad is banging his head on a cinder block wall.
Don't be doing that, man. Don't be beating your head on the wall, okay?
Yeah.
From there, he gets a pat down for drug and weapons, and nothing is found. After that, he goes into the processing room, and this is where the officers take off his handcuffs, make him place his hands on the counter. When I was watching this, I was thinking about how scary it would be to take the handcuffs off of this man, knowing what he had just done. But then I was really thinking about it, and honestly, Chad Doerman is a giant coward, which is why he went after his 3 small children instead of attacking someone maybe his own size. He went after 3 defenseless little boys who loved him and trusted him and could have done nothing to stop him. And the fact that he just laid on the ground after the officers came and arrested him and he was just so docile after that is just, it's not surprising to me when I really think about it, because he had a gun. He could have done something when the officers arrived. Thank God he did not. But I really think it reinforces my opinion that Chad Doerman is just a giant bully, a giant fucking coward, the fact that he went after children and women. But let me know down below how you feel about that. After this all happens, he goes on to have a strip search, and I'm honestly shocked that they show the full strip search. Thankfully, the officer did not look lower than his chest, because I'm sure it would have been blurred out, but that's the last thing I think any of us want to fucking see. And honestly, I do commend these officers for being so neutral with Chad, knowing what he had just done. I understand it's their job to be unbiased, but what he did is unimaginable, and I'm sure some of these officers have children, and it takes a lot of strength and control to be able to hold yourself together when dealing with someone like that. And I'm sure a lot of us couldn't be that neutral. Now, some other information that has recently come out is a redacted police report. And there's a bunch of them. So I'm just gonna pick some parts out of them that I thought were interesting. A lot of what's in these reports is stuff we've already seen in the initial body cam footage, but there are some new details from after that body cam footage ended. This report reads, and I quote, "After Deputy Red took the male, Chad Doerman, I responded in the front yard of the residence where Redacted was giving redacted children medical attention. Redacted 2 of the children and Deputy Sparks picked up one of the children and ran towards EMS. I remained redacted and assisted with medical attention with one of the children, end quote. So this is kind of detailing what we didn't see in the body cam footage of the officers trying to save the children. We also know now that the mother of the 3 children who had been shot in the hand was actually specifically shot in the left thumb. Now, whether she lost her thumb or her thumb was able to be saved or like how severe the injury exactly was, we don't really know at this point. There's not really much information on what happened to the mother, who the mother is, and a lot of the backstory, which is a lot of stuff I think people are really interested in, is the backstory on how all of this came to happen. What exactly was happening that day that caused Chad to go into such a spiral. Now, we do know that he was allegedly planning this for a while, but what exactly triggered him that day to decide to do this and go through with all of this is still a mystery. Now, in another release, we see it stated that the children had been shot and that they're laying in the front yard. Children are also shot and not breathing. And honestly, these little guys didn't have a chance. As I said earlier, they were so small and so young and so little that they couldn't really do anything against Chad, especially since he had a gun. I mean, even if he didn't have a gun, there's not much that these kids could have really done. He was so much bigger than them. He could have used his hands and probably done just as much damage, and that's the sad truth. These little guys didn't stand a chance. In yet another release, we see it reads, and I quote, "I saw one EMS member performing chest compressions on a small boy, victim 2, who appeared to be around 3 to 4 years old. I went over to help with medical care, and the EMS member stopped CPR and said the child was deceased. After a closer look, it was obvious that he was deceased from a gunshot wound to the left side of his head. I covered the child with a sheet provided by EMS. I was informed that a 3rd child, victim 3, was in the back of the ambulance being treated for a gunshot wound. I was notified shortly after this that he had died also," end quote. Now, this makes me wonder if there was still some sort of signs of life with that child that was put into the ambulance. But either way, in the end, there was no saving them from what Chad did to them. It's also detailed in the investigation notes that one child was laying on the side yard near the porch stoop, another was lying on the side yard near the driveway entrance, and the 3rd was in the ambulance when this officer arrived. And that's kind of all the information we currently have right now. As always, I want to know how you all feel about this new information, how you feel about that body cam footage of Chad being processed. Are you just as concerned about how calm he was in that room with the officers? Just no emotion whatsoever, just doesn't care. And I think that's scarier than any of this. But as always, if new information does come out on this, I'm gonna keep on top of it and keep updating you all on this because this is a case that I'm really invested in. I'm really interested in the backstory of all of this and how all of this came to happen. So if you're not subscribed, I definitely recommend hitting that subscribe button so that you're notified when I do post updates on this video. As always, if there are any cases you want me to cover, let me know down below and I will look into them. And with that, I hope you all stay safe out there. Lock your windows and doors. Please keep Clayton, Hunter, and Chase in your thoughts as well as their family and friends. And I hope to see you all in the next video.